strategies and concepts discussed are for educational purposes only and do not represent specific investment, tax, or estate planning advice. Investing carries an inherent element of risk, and it is in everyone's best interest to consult a tax, legal, or investment professional. Beth Williams is an investment advisor representative of, and advisory services are offered through USA Financial Securities Corp., a registered investment advisor. Megan Carney, Megan S. Carney PLLC, and Financial Arc Builders are not affiliated with USA Financial Securities Corp.
Welcome to Money Healing. I'm your co-host, Beth Williams.
And I'm your other co-host, Megan Carney. We're here to talk about money and our feelings related to it. I'm a psychologist who specializes in helping sensitive people.
And I'm a financial planner. We both talk to everyday people just like you about these topics.
Everyone's mental health and money health journeys are so different. And as unique as we all are, there are some common themes when it comes to how our emotions impact our money and vice versa.
And it's those common themes that we are going to be discussing together, both the themes themselves and some ideas from us about how to move forward and heal your relationship with money. In the next bit of episodes, Megan and I will be unpacking the various emotions and trauma themes that we've encountered within our observations over the last few years.
We discovered that people fell into one of two camps, one that knows their numbers and where they are financially, and those that don't know their numbers and where they are financially. We recommend that you go through the episodes and listen to the ones you believe may apply to you.
Megan and I are big advocates for getting collaborative support for both your mental health and your financial health journey. As you listen, we recommend that you pay attention to yourself, your reactions emotionally, and reach out to either a mental health professional and or a financial professional to help you deal with your relationship with money.
We'll begin by discussing I don't know my numbers and blank. Is there something that comes after that? Emotional themes we'll discuss within that will be fear, avoidance. What happens if I lose or fail? Shame, guilt, and even domestic violence and abuse with the overarching theme of trauma.
We will then discuss I know my numbers and blank. Some of the emotional themes that we'll discuss within that will be hopelessness, fear, shame, embarrassment, burnout, never enough, feeling lost, undervalued, worry, and then we'll also deal with the overarching theme of trauma.
Hi, welcome back to Money Healing with myself, Megan Carney, a licensed psychologist, and Beth Williams, our wonderful financial planner. Today we're talking about how we might know our numbers or think we know our numbers, but still be not getting help or avoiding getting help because we're afraid of what somebody is going to tell us about our money. And I know personally, Beth, like the fear can be there of like this dream that I have, this thing that I want to be able to buy someday, or this business I want to be able to start, or this lifestyle I want to live is impossible, absolutely cannot happen. That's the biggest fear that I've seen amongst people. And I'm curious if you've noticed other fears in clients or people who've been hesitant to become clients. And if so, what those are.
I would say that most of those have been around a fear of the future in general. Like we do a lot of estate planning work, for instance, and it's really hard to think about not being here or someone passing away. And so there's a fear about the future in general that we're trying to, work through and create a safe space to be able to talk that through. But there's definitely fear of not being able to accomplish what I want. There's a fear of maybe I don't know what I want. And if that's where you're at, I would reference back to one of our previous episodes on that. But yeah, there's a lot of different fear elements around just not knowing how the future is going to play out.
And man, if we had a crystal ball, like it would make life a lot less interesting for sure. But also a lot simpler, I guess, if we just knew and could know how everything's going to turn out. But, I'm a psychologist, not a psychic. I can't tell you how things are going to turn out. And I believe as much as we like to think like we can absolutely 100% predict what's going to happen financially in the future, I'm guessing that you don't have a crystal ball either, Beth.
I do not. It would make my job a lot easier if I had one.
So we have this like fear of the future, and really the best we can do is make some educated guesses.
Yeah, and we typically will try to, with each client, depending on where they're at in certain phases of life, we will try to just take off certain chunks. Like maybe we're just looking at the next 5 years, or we're looking at the next 10 years. And then each year when we get back together, then we can reassess, is this actually where we were when we were forecasting this out? Did we take the trip that we were thinking we were going to? Because things do change. And so we just want to be able to adjust to those as best we can.
And I hear you saying, like 5 years, 10 years, chunks of years. And I know people who are like, I can't even imagine what a year from now is going to be like. So, how could they even consider going to talk to a financial planner when they don't even feel comfortable saying that they know where they're going to be in a year?
Yeah, we had a study that came out, I believe this was a decade ago or so, in the financial industry, and there was a very big gap that we found. If I'm thinking long term, the average person, it looked like based on the study, was saying that that's out 6 months. So right now at this podcast, it's April. And so we would be looking at, I could probably tell you what I'm going to be doing for like October, maybe the holidays, and it just kind of depends. But that's about how far we could think through. Well, then for the average financial advisor, when they were thinking long term, they were thinking 12 years in advance. So there's a huge gap, obviously, between what an advisor is thinking of long term and what an average person is thinking of long term. So at least for me, when I'm working with a client, I try to gauge based off of that. Like maybe they, in their own profession, are forced to think further ahead. And so they can conceptualize further ahead than that. And if they can't, then that's fine too. And we in our office just try to adjust based off of that, because it can be really overwhelming to think about a year or 5 years or 10 years in advance. And we just will try to adjust to whatever is more comfortable for them. And if it's a 6-month check-in and we'll just, see if this is actually what I'm trying to do, then that's fine. Again, my job is to look out of the front window, to use the analogy that we've used in previous episodes. So I'm going to be looking further out than you probably are. But even if it's just easier to take a couple months at a time, I think the more communication around what a long-term picture is for you makes my job a lot easier.
Absolutely. And I wonder how much of that even just goes to, thinking back to how many times we've talked about values, having an entire episode about values. You as the financial planner, just knowing what their values are and knowing that, yes, they might change a little, but they're generally pretty stable for most people. Knowing that that's like the far away thing, even if your client can't think about it, you're able to keep that in perspective. So I'm curious about like the things that you tell people that you imagine that they would be afraid of hearing.
I imagine that most people are afraid of success, that it's actually attainable, whatever it is that they're trying to do. I think a lot of times we as humans try to put roadblocks in front of ourselves. And I don't know if it's that we're limiting ourselves on purpose. Again, I'm not the mental health professional, but it almost seems like sometimes we put more roadblocks ahead of us than we actually need to have. And it's very healthy to be aware of what could possibly be up on the road ahead, but sometimes those things are just made up in our minds and it's not actually something that will make a lot of sense. My husband and I will joke about this a lot of times that, when we were a kid, we thought that quicksand was going to be a really big deal, and it didn't end up being that big of a deal.
Yeah, it was in all the movies.
It was in all the movies. It was like, I don't know if you guys did this too, but all of a sudden the floor is lava or the floor is quicksand. And so as a child, you had to crawl around the counter. Sorry, mom. But that was definitely something that, we found was in our heads, and then it ended up being not as big of a deal as maybe we thought it was going to be. So I definitely think that fear of success is there. I think fear of the future and not knowing what's going to happen. And that's very challenging, I understand. That's something that we'll try to reference back to people on. There's things that are inside of our control and what we can direct. And there are things that are outside of our control and what we can direct. And oftentimes people are focused on what they can't control more than they are what they can. And there's a lot of power in referencing back to what it is that I can actually do and how I can actually control the situation. But I also think, to the point of the topic of this podcast and what we're talking about, having a fear that somebody's going to, I guess, shame you into feeling like you can't actually do what you're trying to do, and having a safe place to be able to process through that. And in this next episode, we'll talk about shame and those emotions, but we had an advisor once in our practice, and he would talk to clients and he would say, well, you're trying to live a champagne retirement on a Bud Light budget. And I think that he meant that to be a joke, but it was quite hurtful, I think, to just jump in and make an assumption about what the person's trying to do. And kind of like when you go to your doctor's going to give you some suggestions. Of course, they're going to be blunt with you. They're going to tell you this is where you're at, and maybe you're not as healthy as you thought you were. Maybe you're healthier than you thought you were, but they're going to be blunt and direct. And my job is to do that as well. But I think to do it in a respectful manner and to do it in light of your values and what you're trying to do is really where maybe there's a gap between those.
And I would say, like, if they're shaming you, if they're embarrassing you, like, yeah, that's not a supportive relationship. And you want, at least I would want, my relationship with my financial advisor to be a supportive one. And the fear part, though, like, I think you could be the best financial advisor in the world, and they could still have some fear. So I don't necessarily think it's the fear. I just want to make that clear. That should be driving the bus of, like, nope, can't work with this person, afraid of what they're going to say, because you are going to be afraid of what everybody is going to say. And so we need to tackle the fear first, if that's stopping you from working with a financial advisor.
It's hard to not only know what it is that you're trying to do, but it's also hard to open up and tell a stranger about that, and to feel like they're going to be the right place to do that. For me as a financial advisor, I would prefer that you come to me and say, this is what I want to do. This is roughly when I'm going to want to do it. This is roughly what it's going to cost. And then I'm going to try to figure out, how do we make that happen, instead of just shutting it down and saying, no, you can't afford that. I would rather try to figure out how we can make that happen than try to just look at the numbers and say, no, you can't do that, or you need to work 5 more years, or you need to work for the rest of your life. I don't think that that's a very great way to go about advising.
And the logical, like, these are the numbers piece can be really helpful in alleviating fear. And I don't know if that works at the start, right? When you're first meeting with a financial advisor and fears may be driving, right? You're afraid that the numbers aren't going to say what you thought they were going to say. Or maybe you're afraid that they're going to confirm your worst fears. And not going into that initial meeting with somebody or early meeting with a financial advisor and not having that logic piece, not having the data yet to be able to confront the fear really makes it hard, right? Because they don't know yet. And when we're facing fear and we don't know the data yet, I think one of the most powerful questions that we can ask ourselves is like, is this a feeling that is just telling me a belief, or is there actually something to back up this belief? And most of the time, not all of the time, of course, but most of the time when a feeling is really driving and we ask ourselves like, well, do I have any data to really like back this up, or is the fear just convincing me that it's true? Most of the time we either don't have the data to back it up, to back up that fear is going to be the truth, or we just even have data of the opposite, like actually the opposite's probably true and fear's just trying to drive the bus right now.
So when I'm talking with someone and they're coming to the conclusion that they maybe can't do something that they thought that they were going to do, and maybe it's really devastating or really hard, what do you think some of the emotions are that are coming up for that person?
I think there are many emotions and they fall under grief, right? When we talk about grief, usually people think about the very specific, typical, someone died and now I'm grieving them. But dreams die. Moves happen. People move in and out of our lives for various reasons other than death. Relationships end, and our health changes. We grieve all of those things, or at least grief is happening, whether we're moving through the grief or not. And so with grief, you're going to feel denial. You're going to feel anger. You're going to try to negotiate a way out of it. And it's not going to be linear. It's going to come in waves, and some of those waves will sneak up out of nowhere and knock you down. Others will be small and you'll see them coming, and everything in between. But all of those feelings are going to come up, and like, just know that that's normal. It is normal to grieve a dream, to grieve a hope that you had. And for me, the best way to grieve, and I think this is true for most people, is to give it space. Give all of those feelings space. Because otherwise you're just shoving it down. And that's going to explode on you at some point if you're just shoving it down, right? Like the Coke bottle that you just keep shaking. And eventually you try to open it, it's just going to go everywhere. So we have to give ourselves space to feel all of those things and to say goodbye to that expectation, that hope, that dream, that relationship, whatever it was that we had. Because until we say goodbye, until we really let go, we can't open the door to what might come next. If you know your numbers, or you think you know your numbers, and you're really afraid of what a financial advisor is going to tell you, first I want you to ask yourself, does my fear have any evidence that this is actually true, or evidence that it might not be true? or just no evidence at all, doesn't know crap. Right? Just asking yourself those questions is going to help soften the fear. It's not going to take it away, but it'll help soften it. And then know that no matter what the financial advisor tells you, you can't do this thing, you can't succeed at this, you can't do whatever it is you were dreaming of doing. One, they don't have the crystal ball, they could be wrong. And two, even if what they're saying is accurate, what they're saying is true, you can get through it. You can grieve that loss and find something new. On our next episode, we're going to be getting into knowing your numbers and feeling embarrassed or ashamed. Maybe it's going to be of some of these things that you think the financial advisor is going to tell you. I hope you join us for that next one. See you soon.